Joel Rubin, who's a Democratic strategist. He joins me now from Chevy Chase, Maryland. And we have Bruce DeValle, who is a constitutional law expert out of Annapolis, Maryland. Joel, I want to kick it off with you. You were actually part of a letter of around 150 signatories of former national security officials, not just from the Trump administration, but from other administrations, saying that this is a big threat to national security, the fact that Trump is not conceding the election and the fact that Biden doesn't have access to these briefings. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Thanks, Kilmany, for having me. These moments are critical. Every day matters. And in national security, one never knows where a threat is going to come from and when, if it's going to take place, when it will happen. So we need continuity of government. I served in the executive branch for a number of years, including during the time when there was a transition from President Clinton to President Bush. And at that time, because of what we saw in the delay in the transition, no Bush officials were coming in. And the 911 Commission later pointed to that period as a bad period for our national security because the Bush team didn't have enough time to prepare, didn't get the continuity of information, and ultimately was not really up to speed and ready for the terrorist attacks on September 11th. So we need to stop playing with fire. President Trump needs to step up. He needs to act like the commander-in-chief that cares about the country, allow the transition to go forward. He can continue his legal fight at the same time and really think about America, not just his own personal political goals.
Bruce, are we wading into legal waters now with this delay that could, as Joel was describing, impact national security matters? Are we getting into legal territory here? And what is the president's timeline for being able to recognize Biden as the president-elect and essentially allowing these intelligence briefings to go forward?
Well, there's really no legal standard. There's nothing in the Constitution that requires either a concession speech or a transition. It's not official until July 6th. Everyone knows that. It's not even quasi-official until December 14th when the electors meet. And with all due respect to Joel, I fail to see how missing a few meetings in January would have an impact 9 months later. I think a lot of this is a tempest in a teapot. It's Joe Biden himself says it would be nice, but it's not really all that necessary. And everyone seems to be forgetting that Kamala Harris is on the Senate Intelligence Committee. She gets all this stuff. So he just needs to go down the hall and talk to her or wherever she is. Pick up the phone, call her. I think this is just another attack on Trump and the Trump administration. It's more whining. It's fascinating for me to hear Schumer say everybody needs to stop. They need to respect the election and move on. These are the people from his party that contested the 2016 election until 7 days ago. 7 days ago was when they gave up contesting that election. They created all of these false gremlins and monsters and hoodoos about Russian interference. They tried to impeach the president. None of it worked. So this is a process that we see. This is a legal process. It is not that unusual. It's nothing that we haven't seen before. The briefing started in 1960. Since 1960, we've seen a little bit of cooperation on the briefings, but these briefings are not that significant. You get most of this stuff by looking at the New York Times. I think Joel knows that.
Oh,
I think everyone knows that, and Joe Biden knows it because he said it's not that important.
No, Bruce. Please don't put words in my mouth that I do not agree with at all. And transitions aren't just about the president and the vice president. I know in the Trump administration, they think that there's only one person that matters. But in the Biden administration, there will be many officials that matter. And that means the transition teams to the Defense Department, which the president has just now decapitated its leadership, to the State Department, the intelligence community. We need to have our officials up to speed, ready to go on day one. Every day delayed is a day denying the American people confidence in our national security. Now, I'm happy that President-elect Biden has said he's confident, because it's true. He has a variety of very experienced, up-to-speed officials on national security. So maybe we, the Democrats, can cover for these deficiencies that the Trump administration is extending to us. But that's still no excuse for bad behavior by the Trump administration. This is unprecedented. It's never been done in this manner. It's because of petulance and the president not willing to accept results. and not even thinking about the American people's security during this legal process, which he does have every right to pursue. But he can do both at the same time. There's no reason for him to be denying the president-elect's ability to get the information to his team.
Bruce, let me ask you this. What is the president's strategy at this point when it comes to the legal battles that we're seeing play out in some of these key battleground states, as well as the timeline for these recounts? How is the president still thinking at this point that there is some path to victory, and how is he planning to challenge this? Because I know that this could wade into the issue of having state legislators appoint electors. Is that the road that the president is going down? And how long are Republicans willing to hang on while he does this?
I think if that's his road, the 12th Amendment, there's a huge fallacy. I've heard a number of people talk about that, and it's sort of like if A plus B and then a miracle happens, we get to see. Well, that miracle isn't going to happen. We're not going to invoke the 12th Amendment. It just isn't going to happen. I think what he is trying to do, and we've talked about this, it's political theater. He is trying to fight for the sake of fighting, for his own personal psyche, but also for the party. Never forget, the fate of the Senate hangs in the balance in Georgia. If everything was given up and abandoned and all of these matters were not explored, I believe you might have a result in Georgia that you're not going to get otherwise if this process continues. I don't think most of these lawsuits are correct. I think whatever constitutional issues he had have been sublimated and subsumed by the fact that the votes that are involved are not enough to count. But I do believe there's a really good chance that this fight is continuing to continue to bolster the Republican Party and to continue the fight in Georgia in the runoff election. I also think there's a very good reason to believe that Trump will cease this process. He is acting petulant. He's not acting as petulant as the Democratic House when they tried to impeach the president because they couldn't stomach the coronation of, or the lack of coronation of Hillary. But I believe that by the end of this weekend, he'll probably permit Mr. Biden to get his briefing, which he says he doesn't need, doesn't care if he gets or not, and he can just go talk to Kamala. She's getting them. So everybody's getting all upset, and you say it's not true, but it's absolutely irrefutable that she's on the Intelligence Committee. Well, she can go to whatever briefing she wants. She doesn't get the materials, but she does get the sources. She gets the information. This is another tempest in a teapot.
All right, guys, we got to wrap this up. Joel, I'll give you the last word on this one.
Tiny quick thing. If this is about the election in Georgia, that is a very poor excuse for this kind of behavior. The presidential election is done. The president should acknowledge the results and move on to fight the Georgia fight, which I agree with you is significant. But this is just dragging the American people through another bit of mud and undermining our democracy and Americans' confidence in our institutions.